Hi! Hello, ladies, gents, and terrible judges of character inviting me into their home. Now that the Rain World pile of playthroughs is finally over, we can cap it off with a little bit of distance looking back, judging every one of the playthroughs, putting them on a rank according to my preferences. It is basically how much fun did I have, my opinions on it, obviously. This disclaimer, it shouldn't even need to be done, but I'm doing it anyway. Obviously, it's just my personal preference. It doesn't invalidate your own. It's mandatory to start with the meme character, the joke character, and of course it is just not worth finishing, not even worth playing. It's a gag stretched over 20, 50 hours that would take you to play through it legitimately. Probably not even with dev tools you're going to have a good time getting through this nonsense. Is something that you should just know about. You find out about it, haha, that's cute and quirky. Oh, wait a minute, you actually want players to get through this campaign and you offer an ending that is unique. Just look it up on the internet. If you want to play the crime against humanity that is a Slugcat dating sim, just play the standalone version you can find online. Leave this thing in a dumpster where it belongs.
Goodbye,
Next step is the monk. It is in the order that they are unlocked. The monk. It is a character that I have not played. Therefore, it is not worth finishing. And you may be like, oh, you piece of garbage. How dare you say that this character is not worth playing through and finishing when you haven't even started? Case in point, I am a super Rain World nerd, and I do not feel even one iota of being compelled to play through the monk campaign. Not because I don't think it should exist, not because I think it's garbage or anything, but if you play through the Survivor, which is my very much recommended way of experiencing Rain World for the first time, playing through the monk is Survivor but worse, Survivor but more boring. So it's like, what's the point? I don't want to do it. The only reason to ever do it is to see the ending cutscenes, which is like, I'm just gonna look it up. So therefore, monk, love you, baby. You should exist. An easy mode should exist in Rain World because Survivor is actually impossible for a pretty sizable subset of the gamers out there. But definitely, it is not something I consider worth finishing if you can actually get through the Survivor campaign. Coming up next is the Survivor. Of course, the Survivor is the standard. He belongs right in the middle. The tried and true Rain World experience that we all fell in love with, or most of us fell in love with. It is the main struggle, extremely difficult, but just interesting and fascinating enough to keep you driving forward. And at least for me, it happened at 5 Pebbles when I realized, holy crap, this game is actually incredibly special. It is some insane experience that I didn't realize the scope of it until you go through the damn 5 Pebbles superstructure. You get through all the rot, all the nonsense, like, what is going on? Then random god starts playing as like, oh man, I am in a different dimension right now. It is so good, and it's like the standard Rain World experience that everybody should start with. So, you know, he doesn't really get judged on a quality level compared to everybody else. He's just the average experience that you're going to get, and he belongs smack in the middle of everybody else. This is the standard that you judge everybody else around. Next in line, the Hunter. He is a fantastic little fella, hard mode enabled. Something that I have not been able to get through. It is too difficult. I played through in the, the giant playthrough that we did in the channel. I made it the mission that I think is what I can accomplish, which is getting to Moon and reviving her. I have since restarted, tried to make it to 5 Pebbles, then Moon, then Ascension. I got to 5 Pebbles in 5 cycles. It was a horrible ordeal, and I'm like, there's no way I'm gonna make it. I'm going to keep trying, but it is just too difficult. The thing is, though, Hunter is hard mode. It is spelled out It is the difficult experience, and I love the lore around it. It's not just, oh, it is the survivor, but it's harder. It is actually another giant part of the lore being set slightly earlier than the survivor, and you are the entity that is sent out from the distant iterator to go and revive Moon. It is a fantastic piece of lore. And so I consider it Rain World Plus. It is an awesome experience. Not just because of that, like the unique gimmick of the hunter, it used to be very identifiable, but now with all the new Slugcats, he has been diluted a lot. But the one unique thing that he keeps is that timer, the cycle limit, and that puts so much pressure on your playthrough. It basically forces you to restart if you screw it up. It is almost it is not even almost, it's literally a speed run of the game, and if you're not good enough, you're not gonna make it. So I really like the fact that it exists, and thankfully I am at least capable enough to get that sweet little sequence to go to Moon and see her revival. I think it's a fantastic addition to the game. I consider him more fun to play because of that time limit. I would rather play more as Hunter than the survivor because of it, and that is why he goes up there in Rain World Plus. Now we have the Gourmand. I love the Gourmand. I love this little chunker. He is hilarious to me that he exists. Perhaps I wouldn't have picked him as the introduction to the new Slugcats because he is so slow. He moves so slow. He does have a very fast slide and rolling around is hilarious and fun. But overall, his being exhausted mechanic because he hopped 3 times in a row, it kills it for me. It just kills it. The Gourmand has a lot going for him, but he should have been more fun. He should be actually a little higher than the survivor. There you go. So his ear doesn't get clipped. Very important. This Gourmand conceptually is hilarious. The crafting mechanic is fun. All the wacky stuff that you do. Another gripe that I got, I'm going to get to it after I get done with the mobility. The mobility really does, I mean, it doesn't kill it, but it puts it down where it's literally my impression of him as I think back is it really should have been more fun, especially because the Gourmand's campaign, the final objective of it, here's the shopping list. It sends you through the entirety of Rain World's map, and being forced to do that with this diabetes chunker that gets tired after he breathes too hard, it's just too hard. It's too cumbersome. It's too boring. And the struggle is not fun to go through the game. I love the concept of him. Dropping on my enemies through a fat ass attack is fantastic, but he really should have been more fun. And a gripe that I do have though is look at this. Look at these icons right here. There's the shopping list of what he wants to eat throughout all of Rain World. Can you tell what the hell this is? You kinda do. Can you tell what this is? I don't know what this is. There is an icon in the map that will show you, if you enable it, where these guys spawn. So that's a little bit of help. Can you tell what the hell this green blob is? I would not know. I have no idea. I mean, if I hadn't had looked it up, I needed to because otherwise I would have spent 30 hours roaming around like a moron trying to figure out what some of these icons are. I mean, it's a small gripe. The entire point of Rain World in general is to throw yourself at the game and explore it, and that's the joy of it. But once I did that once or twice with the survivor, it's like, if I'm going to go in with a certain objective, I want to have a little bit more direction, and this was a little too painful to decipher. So those are my reasons why the Gourmand really should have been more fun. And now the Artificer. I am a huge sucker for revenge stories. Perhaps it's my favoriteest trope to learn about. Not just the revenge itself. I am so glad those miscreants paid for the crimes. It's also the journey of the revengee or rather the Revenger, the Avenger, him or herself, the story of that inner struggle of you give yourself to this unwholesome goal and you lose yourself through that process, and there's always this divergence in the revenge story of some characters will lose themselves completely, and at the end is this super downer ending where they got their revenge, but at what cost, and they are no longer even human, all that stuff. While the other more narrative that I enjoy more is like they got their revenge, it was awesome, and they get catharsis from it. I like more Rain World, the story of the Artificer. It goes more into the first one, the former, but I like more to interpret it like on the latter, that she got what she wanted and she's super happy about that. After all the damn scavengers are subjugated and destroyed, man, there could be no more joy in her heart. Also, the Artificer is probably the most fun gameplay wise. Double jump is always amazing. Constant explosions are hilarious in Rain World, sending the enemies flying off screen. It's never not funny. And her being immune to it makes it so great. It's so great. Artificer goes and fucking love it. And I can tell you already, she is my number one. She does get held back. She does get held back, I very much admit, and this is something that infuriated myself as well. Her campaign, the number of scavengers, and the way that Rain World handles the choke points of scavengers is pretty damn infuriating sometimes. There's just no end to their numbers. It's too much in many areas. It's like they just keep coming, there's no way through, and they just kill you after you have spent literal 30 minutes slaughtering 20 to 30 of them. And there's the one guy that shows up through the pipe and puts a spear through your eye socket and whoops, time to restart. But that being said, it's still an absolutely awesome campaign that it really speaks to my own personal preference, especially when you experience it right after the Gourmand. That incredible mobility of the Artificer. It is so much fun and I absolutely love it. It is the one character that I would not mind at all playing through it again. And also the fact that you get to access Metropolis, the city on top of Five Pebbles, and it is such an awesome, sprawling new area with such amazing visuals. It is the first campaign of Downpour where you get to experience the new stuff. Gourmand is a lot more go through the game, but with these other conditions, and then you go to Outer Expanse, which is great, but also was so painful to do as Gourmand, as opposed to the Artificer, who gets to explore Metropolis in such an absolutely incredible way. It's just no comparison. The experience is so much better. Next up is the Rivulet. Perhaps the most wholesome of all the stories. Without it, perhaps. It is the most wholesome of all the stories. Very heavy on lore, and it's all enjoyable. It is... She ties up... I keep saying she because it looks like a very feminine character, but I don't think the gender is even specified. It's just animals. Who the hell cares? The Rivulet ties up the story. I mean, the Saint later on does tie it up even more, but basically the entire redemption arc happens in the Rivulet of Five Pebbles and Moon, and the lore of the entire campaign is a fantastic story. I don't think it's a surprise that I consider the Rivulet barely below the Artificer, and if it weren't for my personal tastes of loving that revenge story and the whole Artificer gimmick, probably Rivulet belongs at the very top. But still, and not just the lore. The lore is great, but if the gameplay sucks, I'm not going to remember it fondly. Rivulet is the absolute fastest Slugcat. Goes around everywhere. I really enjoyed the first half where cycles were so short and you had to rush to the next shelter. It was a fantastic way to play the game, especially because, you know, by now you have played it through like 4 times and you know where you're going for the most part. So you can work through your faulty memories and find those next shelters. You can skip some, and it's just a really fun time to just blaze through the game. You can be violent, but you can't be wasting time doing it. And that is the first half. And then the second half, when you find that rare faction cell and you have to carry it, you would think conceptually that, oh geez, I have to carry a thing in Rain World. How awesome. I love carrying things in Rain World. But this is the one exception ever that I've had where carrying a thing was so much fun because of the anti-gravity powers of the rare faction cell. So overall, like, I don't think there's a downside to this one. It even makes underwater pain go away because Rivulet can swim like a dolphin. It's a fantastic campaign all around, and then capped off with the bitter airy going in the background, the kind of sort of neighborhood of looks to the moon and being all snowy and stuff. It's just so good. It's so good, start to end. Objectively, I would definitely say Rivulet is the top dog, I guess the top cat of the entirety of the roster, because I personally love Artificer so much. It just barely ekes out under, but I still fucking loved it. Next up, the Spearmaster. Super heavy on lore. Perhaps the heaviest where reading is concerned, if you don't count, carrying pearls to moon and stuff like that. There is the most characterization of peripheral characters. It is very good where lore is concerned. I like that campaign from that standpoint. Gameplay, having two spears is fantastic, kinda aping Hunter's gimmick, but it's okay. It was a really good time being able to have weapons all the time, and the gimmick of eating through murder was quite great. I enjoyed all that. And yet, Spearmaster is too painful. It's too painful. This game is already difficult. Spearmaster went above my threshold of enjoyment versus difficulty. It is too difficult. It's too painful. Obviously, for me, for my ability, you may be sitting there like, oh, Spearmaster was my favorite. It really challenged my skills, and I am a pro gamer, and I am able to get through it, and it was a blast. Sorry, not for me. You can call me a boomer all you want, but I will defend this opinion saying, listen, if you're watching this tier list, you probably are in the top, 5 percentile of skillful video gamers. It is extremely likely that you are an outlier. And what rankles me about Spearmaster, because you see, Hunter is about the same difficulty. You can compare them quite closely, and you're going to have about the same amount of struggle. It's a different nature, but the struggle is about level. The thing is, Hunter is completely optional. It's like something you embark on, and it's, a cool, interesting little story. But Spearmaster, you have to play it if you want to keep and unlock the last one, unless, you just unlock it in the options, which is a perfectly reasonable option. But I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do the whole experience. And Spearmaster is a huge roadblock for low skill people with low skill. I include myself in that low skill comparatively camp. I feel like Spearmaster would be perfect if you just remove 20% of the threats. 1 in 5 creatures go away, and it becomes a lot more palatable. But that struggle in the bridge between Moon and Pebbles, the struggle in the wall, the struggle in, the underside of Moon, that was the worst experience I've ever had in Rain World. It was too hard. And I was still having fun because, I'm doing commentary and I am riffing on my own stupidity and all that stuff, and I am determined to get it done, and it was good. I don't regret it. I would never want to replay it. It was too painful. That being said, it was an awesome experience from the lore perspective, from the visuals perspective, exploring through a standing Moon from the before times, before she collapses, is great. It all gets tainted The memory is tainted by the horrendous, overtuned struggle of the Spear Master, and that is why he's too painful. And at last we have the Saint, whom I absolutely loved. I loved him. I consider him slightly under-revealed, and that's why he goes up there. But another thing that I am very much fond of is grappling mechanics. You give me a grappling hook in any game, I'm going to have a blast. So his inability to fight really didn't bother me in hardly any places because the grappling hook mechanic is so good, it's so fun. I loved using the grappling worm, traversing the underside, the underhang and all that stuff. So having a grappling worm automatic and that is actually more powerful and you can just zip up sheer surfaces. It was a blast from a gameplay perspective. Absolutely loved it. Of course, it is also kind of too hard. It was right up there of being a little too hard. There's just too many monsters here for me not being able to fight back. Again, I feel like it was slightly overtuned, but it did not reach that threshold that the Spear Master did for me. So, even though it was a little too hard, especially Rubicon. Rubicon is a league of its own. It's its own brand of hellish pain. But I actually enjoyed it because it was so bizarre, so out there that I was like, man, this is again, you entered. It was kind of like that experience of going to 5 Pebbles and random god starts playing. The entire Rubicon experience of going through that other weird ass dimension where all dimensions have collided into one weird afterlife hell nonsense. It was fantastic. So gameplay wise, it did not break any threshold for me of, oh, this is too hard to enjoy. All that being said, obviously he belongs up there because the lore is so good. It is so good. The entire far into the future, not just talking about the visuals, which are also fantastic. Between the atmosphere, the visuals of the snowed over rain world, and the fantastic addition to the lore that it does, and also it sends you all through the entire world, finding the echoes. It's all a fantastic combination to make it into a really enjoyable experience. It does get brought down again by the insane difficulty. It is Rain World's gimmick to be an extremely difficult game that is by design, that seems to be forefront of the developers of, we want this game to be very hard, and it is a core part of our design, and we don't care if it's unfair. We don't give a crap. The design is to make an ecosystem where you suffer or not. It just depends on what the wildlife wants to do. Doesn't matter to us. Good luck. So I don't really resent that, but still, I think it would have been more enjoyable if it weren't so difficult, since you have to traverse the entirety of the map and some regions are just absolutely atrocious. The garbage wastes just opened a new butthole in my body because it was just so awful to deal with dropwigs and spiders time and time and time again. They're too fast for me to run away. Anyway, just saying. So got some gripes, but overall, then of course the, going back with the superpowers was fantastic, which it gets inverted again. You get the superpowers, you get to slaughter everything in a rampage of revenge, and then you go to Rubicon and suddenly you are a little piece of garbage again that can barely fight back anyway, even with superpowers on flight. Anyway, still the Saint. When I think back on it, I fucking loved it. So that is my tier list. I hope that you agree with everything and your opinions are 100% invalidated about everything I just said. Deal with it.